building that tragically collapsed because there were structural issues. And the board was overwhelmed with the magnitude of the issues that they were facing. In Florida, unlike in California, if it was essential maintenance of the building, they could have passed special assessments. But those special assessments would have been enormous.
Welcome to the Next Level Living podcast. I'm your host, Summer Blazer, with my co-host, Corey Neubauer. Today, we have Doris Goldstein. We are so excited to have you. And
Thank you.
Yes. Reporter to lawyer to HOA president to condo wonk. I mean, can you tell us, what is that common thread that has really brought you where you are now?
I loved being a newspaper reporter. That was my first job out of journalism school. And I probably would have stayed there, but I met my husband and we moved to Boston, and that was hard to get a newspaper job there. So I was writing scripts for an all-news radio station, and there was this really good law school right across the river. And so I told my husband—
That one law school?
That one. So I told my husband, add another year, let's stay another year. He was there for his residency. I said, let's add another year because I'm going to law school. So I got in, and we had our first child 2 months before graduation, which I thought was a great idea at the time, and graduated from Harvard. And we moved back to Jacksonville, Florida, which was where he was from and where we had met. We both had jobs there, and I was juggling a law firm job and a baby, and he was working long hours. And I decided that I would go out on my own and develop my own practice out of my living room. And nobody was doing this at the time, that I had to kind of hide that I was doing this. And I bought one of the first Macintoshes and a laser printer, which made me look like a really big law firm because everybody else was still using daisy wheels. And I was used to being a journalist. I mean, I could write and type at the same time. And in law school, this was great. And then once I was on my own, I was writing my own documents. I had no secretary, nothing. It was just me and that Macintosh and the world. So
you were ChatGPT before it was ChatGPT,
That's right.
It was all coming from here, and I was really thinking about everything that I wrote. And I didn't take any form documents and just use them. I was thinking about everything that I put in there because I felt that writing was always how I think through things. And I feel that lawyers who write prose that other people can't understand are not thinking clearly. And that if you can think clearly and express it in plain English, that you know what you've written, other people know what you've written, and hopefully homeowners will also be able to understand their documents.
So then when did you get, was HOA the first law that you practiced?
Yes.
What that's kind of...
In law school, first year law school, Real Property 101, what I got out of that was this light bulb moment where they're talking about private governance, basically HOAs. And the premise was that you could create your own rules as long as you wrote it clearly and put it in the public records where everybody could see it. And this was
your little mini government, right?
I want to
exactly
do that. That sounds amazing. I can write. I can do this. So, and we were already living at a condominium at that time because it was Boston, and it was a period of time when they were doing condo conversions. And once we knew we were going to be there for another 3 years, my husband and I bought a conversion, an old building built in 1929 with a boiler and everything else. And so I was already interested in the subject. And I wrote my third year paper on an obscure topic of condominium law. And that was finished about the same time our baby was born. So it all worked out. And then I knew that was what I wanted to do. So I was in the real estate department of a law firm working on condo documents and big master planned communities. And when I went out on my own, somebody that I had known, the client from that work, introduced me to the developer of Seaside, Florida, which was just then in the early stages of development. They had some streets in and a restaurant on the beach, but it was already on the cover of Time magazine, which then said it was the design achievement of the decade or something. It got a tremendous amount of coverage. And I just kind of stumbled into it, but it was the perfect match for me because it was this whole new town that was developing by people who really cared about it, who had a sense of stewardship for the land and wanted to do the right thing. They had traveled around with the designer to look at small towns and kind of retro-engineered what made them work and created this small town that resonated with people instantly. People got it. They knew it. And it created a lot of interest from developers who would come there and say, wow, I want to build something like that. Who's your lawyer? And then they would refer business to me.
Nice.
So here I was working out of my house and having clients from all over the country who were building these really cool projects. And we would roll out the master plan and we would talk about what this place was going to be, who was going to live there, what kind of people, what they would do, what this little space was going to be, because there'd be little funny spaces all over. And you'd have to figure out, what is this going to be? What's going to happen here? How do we make sure that we allow these things to happen here, that those things are protected and that they have a stream of income to make that happen? So it was an amazing, interesting field of law. And I realized after a few years that nobody else was doing this, that I had experience that nobody else had. So I started writing about it and speaking about it and talking about what made these places tick. And we were really talking a lot about building community back then, because the objective of building these small towns was to create neighborhoods where people would feel connected, because it would not be car-centric. You wouldn't drive in and park in your garage and then just be in your house the whole time. They had front porches. They had short front yards. You were close to the street. The streets were walkable. Cars were there, but it was really designed for people too. And when I visited there with my children when they were young, they got it instantly. They loved that they could take $1 and go down to the grocery store and buy a muffin for breakfast, all by themselves. It was just amazing. And people really responded to that. So people continued to build these private communities with HOAs using this approach, but it also influenced urban planning on a grander scale. That there was it influenced more urban development. That this idea of walkable mixed use, that when you take a walk, it shouldn't just be a trail in the woods. You can take that walk and get to a restaurant, to do something, to get someplace useful, to have the needs of your day met primarily without having to go in a car.
So then have you consulted for other states, other developments, stuff like that? I mean, you're obviously you do a lot of stuff in Florida, but
yes,
how far are you going? All over?
All over. I have to make clear now, I am licensed in Florida. Right. I am not licensed in California, and nothing I say is going to be
we'll put a disclaimer.
Opinion. Yes, please.
But we met at a industry trade event, and we instantly clicked, and that's why you're here now, because you have such a wealth of knowledge, and it with the way we were talking before of how California and Florida are have a lot of the same attributes. So it's
but different.
Yeah, but totally different, right? But just in the sense of building so many HOAs, right?
And sometimes Florida does things before California, right? So it can sometimes be seen as that could be something that we could look at and potentially implement.
Let's get into that.
Yeah.
You have some,
because you live in California now.
I live in California,
and you're board president.
And I'm board president
of your HOA.
I'm not practicing law, but I am board president. And one of the things that was astounding to me, because I came with such familiarity with Florida law, that I assumed that I knew how condos work in California. And that was astonishing to me, how different these two systems were, because they were both developed early. The systems developed early because they were the first condo development in the country. There was a lot of condos. It was before there were model acts that other states later adopted. And the approaches were just so different. It astonished me, for instance, that managers aren't licensed. That was in Florida. All of my managers who do any size of condominiums or anything larger than the smallest ones have to be licensed. And there's a division of government, the division of condominiums and planned communities, I think, or mobile homes. And it was known as a condominium bureau in short, but it had a longer name, that oversaw all of these. And in California, nobody even knows how many condominiums there are. But in Florida, every single condominium had to be registered with the state of Florida
Right.
and pay a minimal annual fee. And if homeowners were having a problem with their board and they didn't think their board was following the rules, they had somebody they could go to and who could enforce, if the boards were not following election procedures or something like that, they could get the state involved.
And I think the challenge with that is, right, in California, they haven't established that kind of condo board or governing body in a sense. It seems to fall under just Department of Real Estate, which is probably a little too broad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that was their whole thing was taking care of condominiums. Yeah. Before you had a project, you had to send your documents in and get them reviewed. And it was just a whole different system. And there was also, I sat on a board of the Florida Bar that was a committee of attorneys who worked with condominiums and planned developments. And if there was an issue, they would get together, and even though they were competitors, the rest of the time, they would sit together and come up with model legislation to deal with an issue, like how do you rebuild after a catastrophe, and how do you put together a board when you're after a major catastrophe. They would, or how do you deal with mixed-use condominiums and things like that. That they would sit together and collegially come up with ideas on how to deal with this. And one of the frustrations has been for me is that we get legislation like in California, like saying you can't have a fine of more than $100 because
reactionary, right?
It's reactionary. They're afraid of condominium boards. Yeah. They are afraid of renegade condominium boards, but they haven't given boards the tools that they need to do the job that they need to do. Mm-hmm. And so what I am finding is that after all these years of writing condominium documents, then becoming president, is that we have created an impossible job description, that it just doesn't work, that we are asked to do things that are just extraordinarily difficult for a lay board to do.
And the pay is not very good either.
And they're volunteers, right?
No. And what I'm finding is that there are a lot of people, maybe not as passionate as me about the subject, but pretty passionate about what they're doing for their associations, and they're trying really hard to do the right thing.
Do good, yeah.
Yeah, and they just don't have the tools that they need.
Or they get so frustrated that they give up, right?
They do.
Yeah.
They do.
Yeah. So, well, let's talk a little bit. You know Florida really well, and Surfside and the collapse of Champaign Towers. I think it's obviously had an effect here in California with the balcony bill and stuff. But maybe you can give us a little bit of history on that, just of what your experience was.
To be clear, Surfside and Seaside are two completely different places.
We talked about that. Yes,
just want to make that clear. So Seaside is in the Florida Panhandle. It's a whole little town. Surfside is in Miami, right? And it is a building.
Us California people don't know that geographic that bad.
Building that tragically collapsed because there were structural issues, and the board was overwhelmed with the magnitude of the issues that they were facing. In Florida, unlike in California, if it was essential maintenance of the building, they could have passed special assessments. But those special assessments would have been enormous.
I heard like 14 million or something, like someone crazy.
It was crazy. Yeah. And they could not politically, within their system of having to charge their fellow owners for this, they did not feel that they could charge what they really needed to charge to bring this building up. And there's also at some point a question of economic viability. When some of these buildings, and maybe not Surfside because it was in a very, in a good neighborhood and everything, but there will be some cases as we come along where it's no longer economically viable to be able to to rebuild these buildings or to keep them up at the level that they need to do. But right now, what we're seeing is a level where there is maintenance that needs to happen on a lot of these buildings.
Aging communities.
So there are no statistics on how old buildings are in California, the average condo, but from what I can kind of reverse engineer from Zillow, I think that a lot of buildings were built in the 70s and 80s, and those buildings are now, 30, 40, 50 years old. They are getting old, and they need repairs. And that of a magnitude that I don't think
it's not sustainable. Yeah.
Or that we weren't prepared for, and that people are being hit by assessments much larger than what they had been in the earlier years of the building. And it's not, some of it's deferred maintenance, but some of it is just stuff that didn't happen until the building was 30 or 40 years old.
And some of that stuff, right, it's like in the reserve study, it might be lifetime use or 50, 60 years, right? And now, we see it on the insurance side where carriers are wanting things updated sooner. You might have a roof that has a 40-year life, but after 30 years, they want it replaced or electrical panel issues, things like that. So there's all those pressures just
that were unforeseen,
Yes.
right? The
I'll
electrical
give
panel
you
recalls.
A good example.
Please.
There's a building that I'm aware of that is built around a large atrium, a beautifully landscaped atrium that is essentially a giant planter. And this giant planter sits on top of the garage. It's kind of like Surfside, but not quite as
starting
bad.
to seep through, right?
Yes. Yeah. And whatever waterproofing material was put on the inside of that planter when it was built in the 1980s is gone.
Yeah.
It's not effective anymore. And they're starting to see small leaks in the garage that are warning signs, that if you don't do something about this, you are going to have major structural issues. So it's still small enough that it can be fixed by completely excavating this giant atrium, removing all the plants and all the dirt.
And that's super cheap, right?
Oh yeah, that's an easy job. Get it done in a few days. And then they have to restore the waterproofing of that entire big planter area, and then replant everything, lighting and irrigation, all that stuff. And that's massive. Yeah. That's a huge project.
And that doesn't even do anything to the structure of the actual building.
That's
right?
not, and that's not in the reserve study.
Yeah.
I looked at the reserve study. Right. This is not, nowhere was this possibility raised in the reserve study.
That's one of the many challenges that boards face, right? Is you fix it, you repair it now and do what needs to be done. And that's probably an extraordinary cost. But if you wait, right?
Yes.
The potential catastrophe that could happen or just the exponential cost.
And this board is proactive. They are looking at it. They're going to bring in another opinion, and they think they have another year or two before it gets to be.
But you can't make money out of nothing, right? It's like there's going to be that cost. So what's the difference that you see between Florida and California in that reserve study kind of frame of mind? Like that they're not, are they in a better position versus California of how they kind of manage
Maybe
that reserve
tips
study?
we can take.
Sure.
Yes.
Well, Florida has a new law, a relatively new law, that says that there has to be a structural integrity study done every 10 years.
Okay.
And when the law was enacted, they had a certain amount of time to do that first one for buildings that are more than 3 stories high. And that once that study is done and the timelines are drawn out, that anything with a life of less than 25 years has to be reserved. They are required to reserve for it. And that combined with a crisis in insurance in Florida, which is they're ahead of us on that one too. Yeah. We're getting there, but they're ahead of us, is really impacting the condominium market in Florida. It's making it very difficult to sell condominiums. And I have mixed feelings about this because there is a theory in psychology called temporal discounting, where if somebody says, would you like $100 now or $110 in a month, people will take the $100 now. Instant
gratification.
Instant gratification. They do not want to save for the future. And it's just hardwired into people. So you can try to legislate around that and force people to do it. But the problem is that when you're looking 25, 30 years out, you're not putting those reserves away for your future self. You're saving money for somebody else.
That is a different kind of mindset, for sure.
A different mindset. You're saying, okay, I'm going to come out of pocket now for somebody who may not even been born yet, that I'm saving for somebody for a reserve, something that needs to be fixed 30 years from now in this building. Why? Why am I going to do that? And then the market is not rewarding that. So the issue that you always hear is people want the dues to stay low. People want to keep.
Oh yeah, they're proud ones. Like, we haven't raised our dues in many years. Yeah.
Yeah, and my board gets all the time. Why are our dues so high? Well, certain buildings just cost more than others, and you can try to trim costs, but there's certain, we found out we were getting our trash picked up too many times a week, so we trimmed that. We cut that back. But we
saved a few dollars, right?
We saved a few dollars, but at the same time, we've got a surcharge because our trash room is in the back of the building. And the trash hauler has to come in and they've got a distance fee. And that's a significant part of our bill. I can't change where our trash room is located.
Yeah.
So there's that.
There's all the pressures, right? And then with inflation, with construction costs, everything going up to keep that maintenance up.
Right. And insurance.
Yes.
Oh, insurance. We put in an increase and it wasn't enough. We're glad we still have that insurance. We're delighted we still have the insurance, but it went up like 35% this year. So that's what it cost.
And what did you budget for?
I think we budgeted for 10%.
Yeah.
And then it went up more.
Yeah, we have a lot of HOAs that are,
but some of them went up even more than that. And that's really costly.
And if you can get that, enough coverage to be able to still, be FHA approved, we have a lot of HOAs that now can't get enough insurance. And like we talk about property values now, right? It's like if your HOA dues go up or if the insurance is inadequate, right, that's going to affect the saleability of the property.
Right. But then I had a reader contact me, and she's in a building where the prior board and the prior management just lowballed the budget so badly that they're in a now impossible position, that their dues are, in the 300s. They're just ridiculously low.
Yeah.
And the law allows you to go up 20% a year. It's going to take them a long time to get up to where they need to be.
Yeah.
And they're in big trouble.
So you talked about your thing. Let's talk about your magazine, your articles, your thing. Like help us understand that.
The blog.
The
blog.
The blog. It's a website.
Yes.
Okay. It's a website. It's called Condo Wonk, and that's WONK.
Okay. Where does that come from?
That comes from. I was Condo Wonk. It kind of tripped. It like that had that recurring. Visually, it kind of the recurring O's and N's and stuff.
Okay.
But a wonk is somebody who really gets into the weeds. Who's excited about the details and wants to dig deep. And
that's you.
That was me. That was what I was doing. So it seemed appropriate.
And how long have you had that going for?
Oh, I started it about 2 years ago, but I'm really trying to build it up because I feel it's taking a direction now. But I started with basic how to do it articles. Well, it was things that I had learned because I had questions in my own building that I would go online and I would do searches for, and there was nothing there, nothing that would help me. And so, for instance, electric vehicle charging. We had a fire in the electrical room, and we had to figure out how to do this safely. We had to allow people, the law required us to allow people to plug in, but we needed to do it in a way that wasn't going to harm the building. And so I said, time out. I got to research this. And if you go and you research this online, the internet is designed for selling things. And all of the hits were third-party companies that wanted
companies, all that.
That wanted to sell you a third-party system where they would come in and install the chargers and then charge you back for your own electricity with a premium on top. And our board did not want to do that. They wanted people to be able to wire to their own meters and be able to get their bill from the electric company. And they also didn't want to have to do a lot of out-of-pocket for the HOA. Didn't want to put in a lot of infrastructure. So there were philosophical issues in that decision. So it took us 6 months to figure it out. And I talked to a lot of electricians. I talked to Plug in America and their board members and got some information and worked through this problem. And so the article that results from that is
lessons learned, right?
Lessons learned, but also what's your goal here? So are we trying to make sure that every single person in the building can plug in? Or are we, if we wanted to do that, then maybe we should be doing level 1 trickle charging for everybody. Where is this going? Are people going to be doing all electric vehicles? Are they going to be doing just the hybrids where a 30-mile charge overnight is plenty? Or do we want to be able to do people to fast charge? So we had Tesla owners in our building and they wanted to fast charge. This trickle charging, forget it. They were not interested in that. And so after a lot of research, I found out about a device that could be installed between the individual's unit meter in the electrical room and their charger that would monitor the usage and would shut off the charging if it was too much to safely do with their own unit charging. So if you were in your unit using your air conditioner and your stove and everything else, that it might shut off your vehicle charging. But it would only affect your unit, and it would then allow the existing amperage in the building to be enough for, in your particular circuit, to be enough to safely charge your vehicle.
Yeah, because those buildings were never designed to
They
have
weren't
that.
designed for that. And at the same time, we also discovered that when your circuit breakers on your individual meters are approaching 40 years old, they need to be replaced.
Yeah, and they don't
They
trip.
do not necessarily trip, and that was not a good thing.
And there's
either.
a lot of recalled panels, right?
Yes,
the
yes. We did
Zinsco
not
and the
have one of
Federal
those,
Pacific,
but we did need to do
And
that.
insurance carriers are now requiring that those be
Exactly.
switched out.
Yes.
So, all right. Well, no, good. What else are we going to, Summer?
Well, for Condo Wonk, that is geared towards board presidents, property managers, community managers.
Yeah, it was information that was good for everybody.
Yeah.
So I would like
Real
property.
estate
I'd love
agents.
to have property managers read it, but really the primary audience was boards. But it's good information for everybody. Yeah.
So it's your research and analysis that you are conveying to everyone in an effort to help get that out to more people, right?
Yeah, and so the story that really triggered this whole thing, and that made me feel that I really wanted to put this online and make it available to people, was the one with electric rates, because I just stumbled onto this fact that the electric rate that we were being charged for our common area electricity, which is like all the lighting and the elevator and the pool pumps and all that stuff, was being charged at a rate that was really designed for a single family house. So we were getting the same charge as if we were one house. We were really serving 26 units.
We were like in that tier 3 or the
yes,
high
so
tier.
all of our usage
was way up.
Was getting charged in tier 3, and our bills were going way up in the summertime. So I just kind of naively wrote to LADWP and said, I noticed that we're getting charged for tier 3, and that is there anything else that we can do? Can you adjust these tiers? And they said, yeah, you can get a commercial rate. And here's a handy dandy calculator online that you can see if this would help you. And I plugged in the numbers, and sure enough, a commercial rate would save us a lot of money.
Wow.
And it was called the A1A rate because it's really designed for small businesses that have very consistent usage, that don't have spikes, which was perfect for us because,
yeah, you're going to run the same lights, the same thing all the
elevator,
time.
it's not going anywhere. It's not having seasonal changes. Yeah. It's the same thing. So we got this rate, and it started to save us money. And they backdated it to when I applied.
Oh, wow.
And it was phenomenal. I said, wow, this is amazing. And then I thought, well, why is this so hard to find?
Right.
And there was nothing on the website that would have explained this at all. That if you
they're taking money off the table, right? If they give you a better rate.
Yeah, sure. But okay, so my father was a big influence in my life, and he was an engineer, and his job was to fix things. And he was a mild-mannered guy who didn't raise his voice and rarely used strong language. The strongest language he used was if there was something wrong and people knew about it and could fix it and they didn't, he would use the strongest word in his vocabulary. He would say, that's asinine.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I could hear my father.
Yes.
I knew that this was something that I needed, that all the simple thing to happen was to get this online and so prominent that Google would pick it up, or AI now, that people would know that there's an option. And I tried to get LADWP on the record for that first article almost 2 years ago, and they didn't.
Wouldn't do it.
They just stalled, and they didn't give me anything. And when I revisited it recently to update the article, they did talk to me, and they admitted. They said, yeah, you're eligible for this rate. Yeah, it could save you a lot of money, but it's not on the website. I said, where on the website does it say that? They say it's not there.
And that was it? Just it was not there? No excuse? No.
Yeah, nothing.
No, hey, we'll take a look at that and see if we can add it to the website.
No,
so now
it was
other HOA board presidents can go to Condo Wonk.
And they can
they can read about
and it will
this
tell you exactly how to apply for it. Mm-hmm. And the coolest thing is that now I've got readers coming back to me
with success stories.
That's
exciting.
And I did in a couple of cases, they had applied 2 years ago when the first article came out, and they hadn't gotten anywhere. And I think maybe LADWP is at least treating these applications better than they did in the past. And I actually asked the LADWP spokesperson when I was having this correspondence about one particular case where somebody was denied that rate because they were told they didn't have the right kind of meter. And she wrote back to me, says, okay, we can estimate it. This is the language she should use when she applies for this rate. And the reader wrote back to me and said they got the rate, that LADWP is giving them a new meter for free, and they are getting the new rate.
You're making a difference.
Yeah, and another reader that had gotten it stalled and tossed around from department to department, I had her reapply. I said, use this email address and don't put everything in writing on this email address. And they got the rate, and they're getting a refund for almost 2 years worth of overcharges.
You're teaching them how to maneuver through the system.
To make a difference like that is pretty special.
Yeah, it's saving 20% on our electric bill. It's like $5,000 a year that we're saving.
That's a big deal.
So it's money. And
but it's every aspect that you can do that, right? So,
but there's only so many times you can pull that rabbit out of the hat. You know, there are sometimes you can lower what you pay, but a lot of times you just can't. The buildings cost what they cost. Mm-hmm. And I think that's my mantra. Buildings cost what they cost. And you have to listen to your building. Yeah. And you can't say when you're doing budget making that we want to keep dues below this certain level. You have to do the other way around. You have to give the building what it needs. Yeah. You have to look at all the costs, and you have to look at realistic reserves, and then you have to charge people that, and they just have to get over it.
Yeah. I know you're passionate about the aging building. So how do you as a board address that and with the pressures of cost and everything?
Oof, it is really hard. We had to re-side a significant part of our building, which was originally wooden shingles. And so we were just painting them every 8 or 10 years and replacing bad shingles and painting it again. And, that was like $100,000, to paint the building.
Expensive Band-Aids, right?
Yeah. And to do but what it really needed was to do it in hardy. Yeah. Which take it down all the way down to the plywood level, repair the plywood, repair the waterproofing level, and then put in hardy shingles, which after the fires, seems even more appealing than it was before. But we did it mostly because it would be durable and it wouldn't need to be painted. But it's $1 million to do the whole building. Mm-hmm. And so we did it in stages. I mean, not great, but we did half the building because those were the two sides that were most exposed to sun and rain, because the other were more sheltered and didn't have the leak problems. But we had ferocious leaking problems in that part of the building. And the only way to fix it was to do this. We couldn't just re-shingle anymore, and you can't even use those wooden shingles anymore. Yeah. So we did that, but it was a huge special assessment, and we got a bank loan. So we could get the money up front.
And get the work going.
And anybody who wanted to use a bank loan had to let us know, and they would get a share of the bank loan, or people could pay it up front.
Yeah, and I think that's what HOAs are having, right? There's new codes or older building standards that so you're not just upkeeping the property. Now you actually literally have to upgrade the property.
Right, but it was a magnitude of difference. Yeah. 10 times what the cost just to paint it. Yeah. But it's going to last for 40 years. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's going to be a long-term thing. We're not going to have to paint. Yeah. And hopefully it's going to really do keep us from having leaks.
Nice. Well, let's go back to Champaign Towers a little bit.
Okay.
Still, but what of kind of what you learned, or what, I don't want to say what Florida's doing better, but because I see that there's a comparing and contrast between Florida and California. So like, what are some of the good things that Florida's doing that you would hope that California would lean into a little bit more, I guess?
Wow.
Well, you mentioned to license community managers. Can you? Sure. You don't mean a real estate license, right?
No. It's a special license for community association managers. It's under the professional licensing department. And it is very specific and gives you recourse. If there's a problem with a manager, if there's a bad manager, I know that there are good managers in California, and we have one now we like very much. But we did have an experience with a very, very bad management company who just completely destroyed our bookkeeping. And there was no recourse. The head of the company claimed to have a certification from a particular one of the licensing, one of the organizations that do certify managers. It turns out that he no longer did. But I looked into reporting him to that organization. It would have been a $1,000 fee just to file a complaint. As it turned out, because he wasn't actually licensed there or certified there.
They're not the governing body of him anyway.
Anyway, so I just notified them that he was falsely claiming to be certified by them, and he took it off his website. Yeah.
But the benefit would be educate, right? It would be educate the managers more.
Educate them more and have accountability.
To a standard. And
Yeah.
And
So there are some trade organizations like CAI that does a lot of things. But yeah, it is. I think the pressures of property management companies to be charging less and less
is absolutely a
has
problem.
put the pressure on that they can't, unfortunately, employ that caliber or always employ that caliber.
Right.
Especially with smaller communities. We see a lot of property managers that are juggling multiple properties. And to your point, like how successful can they be if they have that type of workload and expect to do all of these things? So it's a challenge.
They are not charging enough. Yeah. And then they try to make money other ways. This really bad company was charging a ridiculous amount for escrow documents and putting our utility bill on their corporate credit card, so somebody was getting points for their vacation. It was bad. They were.
Well, you moved on from that.
We have moved on from that.
I'm so happy you.
I think we all
like
have.
The one
we all have those horror stories to.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of misunderstanding about what a manager does.
Yeah.
At a minimum, they are collecting dues, they're paying vendor bills, and keeping your bookkeeping and sending out official notices and that sort of thing, helping with budget. But I think a good one also knows buildings. And I think that as buildings age, one of the things we need is that expertise, and that to have a manager who is on top of those kinds of issues and can advise you about vendors and evaluating the vendors and evaluating different approaches would be a really useful attribute to look for in a manager.
Yeah, especially in the LA area, because there's so many unique buildings and obviously aging.
Yes.
And you have to have that, really have that construction expertise. So, because a lot of times the managers, right, they're a professional coordinator, right? They're coordinating all these services, but there does need to be a certain aptitude that they have in order to be able to advise the board in a fashion that's beneficial. But, Yeah, we see a big challenge. I mean, we see a lot of AI that might be helping with at least taking some of the smaller administrative tasks off these managers, because I think a lot of times they have so many tasks to do that they're just reactionary to have to be reactionary to so many things. Like, how can they get into some forward planning or advising of best practices on some of these communities? Because it's only getting more and more challenging. So, Yeah. So,
well, being a board president, what advice would you have for a new board president, even a new board member?
Wow. I get letters now from new presidents and at Condo Wonk, and I think Condo Wonk could have a group chat at 4 a.m. because these people, I was there too, waking up at 4 a.m, worried about the building and how you're going to pay for stuff. I
understand.
It is just, it's absolutely overwhelming, the responsibility and the criticism and or scrutiny, even anticipated scrutiny from the other homeowners. So I think 2 things, and that is, first of all, do find a manager that you trust and that can give you advice and help you. And the second thing is to put your dues at a level that really does pay for the building and reserves, that you need to be realistic about that you can't be bullied into charging people less than it really costs to run the building. And by the way, state law requires you to do that. You're required to maintain the building and to charge owners what it costs to maintain the building. So as a board member, you are obligated to do that. So I think that that's a hard thing to do, but it's a necessary thing. And if you know that you can pay your dues pay your bills from the dues, and you're not worried about how you're going to make the payments in the next month, that you maybe won't wake up at 4 a.m.
Yeah, it is. And we see good boards when they do that, right? It is healthier. The temperature in the room is down compared to, right, just kicking that can down the road is never a good outcome overall. So.
Well, I loved this conversation, and I feel like we need to have a part 2.
Yes.
Anytime.
Well, how can they all get a hold of you? Because we want to make sure we love what you're doing, that you're taking that passion and trying to help others, and I think that's what we're trying to do here as well. Yeah.
So Condo Wonk.
Yay.
CondoWonk.com. So it's WONK, Condo Wonk, and I hope that you find things that are interesting there. I've tried to have some fun with it too.
Yeah.
I'm trying to tell stories. I'm
You
trying
are
to make
so
it
good
interesting.
at stories.
And
So it's engaging. They can reach out and ask questions.
Absolutely.
I love
We
that.
love getting mail.
That's awesome.
Love getting mail. And it gives ideas for new Condo Wonk articles. And I love to have people get back to me on whether they were able
Well,
to
I think you
implement
got
this or not.
your next phases is right, a message board, and then maybe some testimonials.
I'm working on it.
Yeah,
I'm working on a
those
mailbag page.
Yeah.
That's coming. And I'm working on a story about managers and about budgeting.
Right.
That's coming up.
All right.
So good. Can't wait.
Okay.
Thanks for being
Well, thanks
here.
again for
Thank you.
joining us.
Thanks so much.
Thank you for being here. We will see you on the next episode of Next Level Living Podcast.